What's going on, guys? So today we're going to be talking about more tropical update. We got Tropical Depression 9. We have Franklin, Gert. We have Emily. So have this system out in the Atlantic, which will eventually develop as it goes off to the northwest. Gert formed earlier today. Had Emily yesterday. Franklin yesterday as well. And we have 9 now. So it's getting a bit busy. And we'll get to it. So first off, we're going to start with Franklin. This is our biggest issue. We won't mention Gert and we won't mention Emily. These two systems are basically almost gone. So we won't mention them. We'll mention this system and we'll mention 9. And then we'll talk about stuff that I see in the future based on like the Climate Prediction Center stuff up here. So we'll get to it. Alright, so Franklin, similar messaging to what it was yesterday. Heavy rainfall in Puerto Rico and Hispaniola Tuesday and into Wednesday. So tomorrow and into Wednesday. So for over the next 48 hours, expect flooding in Hispaniola and Puerto Rico from the amount of heavy rain that's about to fall. And tomorrow is when tropical storm force winds from Franklin Center and the area just around it are going to begin moving onshore. So we look at arrival time of winds. It looks to be like around 2 earliest arrival. Reasonable looks to be about Tuesday at 8 p.m. tomorrow. So that Tuesday at 8 p.m., which is tomorrow, so it's going to be around when darkness arrives is when winds should start coming onto the island. And then by Wednesday morning, the entire island should be under tropical storm force winds. So the winds are going to be over the entire island by earliest tomorrow night. But if we look at most likely the winds arrive going to be across most of the island by Wednesday morning. So Wednesday morning is when the entire island should be underneath tropical storm force winds. Should be. Earliest would be 12 hours before Tuesday night, but most likely it will be Wednesday morning. So when the Dominican Republic is going to start seeing tropical storm force winds, as well as Haiti and western Puerto Rico. So we'll move on to the wind history. The wind field for Franklin isn't too large right now at the moment. It's mainly because the structure hasn't gotten to the point where it can actually organized. Because most of the convection is displaced to its right side, and we're still waiting on the center to align with that so it can actually begin developing. So it hasn't done strengthened too much today from what we've seen. If we look at, we'll look at one to come. So it will be a tropical storm when it makes landfall. So it will be just south of the island at 2 a.m. on Wednesday. But if we think about just on 2 a.m. on Wednesday is when the storm should be just south of the island, but the rain will already be in Hispaniola a good 12 hours before a good 12 to 24 hours beforehand. But the heaviest rain should be coming in around when Franklin Center comes onshore. And then it goes over the island. We don't know what happened once it crosses over the mountains here, because the mountains of Hispaniola could shred it apart. But it seems like it survives to the other side, and then it becomes a hurricane later down the line over the weekend, if we can continue to look at that. So look at the discussion. We won't read too much of this. They did say the long-term forecast is tricky, short-term, due to steering currents and wind shear. But if we're looking at intensity, just strictly intensity, it should stall its intensity for the next 12 hours unless something changes. And then by this time tomorrow, or when this next update comes out, 24 hours from then, it should be 60-mile-per-hour storm, and then weaken and strengthen just a little bit more before it hits land, and it weakens down. And then when it gets back over water, then it should start re-strengthening at a more decent rate. So we'll look at it. Look at the storm on tropical tidbits in this website. We'll look at the storm on satellite imagery first. So you can see this convection around the storm, but it's not staying around too long. The convection has fired up, but it's beginning to flare out and weaken. There's still some consistent convection off to the right side, off to its east, but the convection that was there earlier is still lopsided. It's weakening now. So overnight, there should be another burst of convection, but this doesn't show signs of an organizing storm at the moment. This storm is not organizing too quickly. It's slowly getting itself together. So if we're looking at it based on satellite imagery, it's slowly getting there, but it's not there quite yet. It's struggling a lot. Now we look at forecast models. When we look at the entire North Atlantic, there's a Gulf system, but this is Franklin. So around 1,000 millibars in 6 hours, according to the GFS. We'll look at multiple different models for this. We take it out just the rest of the day. Within 24 hours, it does begin strengthening, 999. That center closes off more, and that heavy precipitation gets closer to the center, and then it begins strengthening a bit quicker as it gets closer to the Dominican Republic. We'll actually zoom in on Western Atlantic because the eastern waves aren't really much of a concern at the moment. We have 995, so that's a strong tropical storm, mid-range strong tropical storm. Moves over the islands, and then it reemerges on the other side within 3 days, and then it tries to strengthen as it moves out into the open ocean. And we'll see what it does from there as time goes on. This can produce a lot of swells after it exits the Caribbean. So we'll see what happens there. If we look at rainfall from the GFS perspective, move this over here. We get rainfall, total accumulated. We're still looking at that 6 to 10 to 12 inches of rain in this area. We're still looking at that. So that flash flooding threat is still very much there. So that flash flooding threat is still going to be there. And I have to watch out for mudslides if you live in Haiti and in the Dominican Republic. Have to watch out for mudslides, strong flooding, heavy flooding it's going to flood out roads, cities. So if this rain falls faster than what's expected, because most of this rain falls within a span of, it seems to be span of 30-ish hours. 12 inches of rain in span of 30 hours. That's going to cause a lot of problems, especially over the mountains. So I can just keep an eye on this. So expect flash flooding. So you're going to expect to see the rain to be heavy, and then you're going to expect floods quickly afterward. Landslides in areas where there's too much rain. It's going to cause parts of cliffs to come off from mountains. It's going to cause a lot of damage. Be prepared for power outages too, as the flooding knocks out the power grid. And be prepared to be isolated just in case the water from the flood washes out roads and connections to nearby areas. So that's what I would be preparing for in the Dominican Republic and in eastern Haiti. It really depends because the heaviest rain is where the storm center is and just east of it. We'll look on the Euro to see if it says a similar thing. On the Euro, there seems to be less rain, but there's still definitely enough of rain to cause the same impacts I just listed earlier. Maybe a little bit lighter so the impacts aren't as damaging, but still plenty enough rain to cause flooding. CMC doesn't have the rain as heavy, but it spreads it over a wider area. So that can be more of an issue. So that brings more rain to in between Haiti and Cuba, and that brings it over to Turks and Caicos. So that heavy rain is spread over a larger area, so the flooding might not be as bad, but there will be more flooding in more places. So that will increase the amount of people affected and cause more damage because it's over a wider area, if this were to verify. So we'll keep an eye on that. We'll look at we'll check the H-Wharf models. We'll check these models for intensity for the storm. But yeah, the CMC brings Franklin farther west and begins developing it stronger in that strait between Cuba and Haiti. So that brings the impacts farther west and gives Puerto Rico less rain. So this storm track affects land more using the CMC. And if we check the Euro quickly, the Euro barely doesn't see it. It doesn't really see the storm. It sees the heavy rain of the storm, but it doesn't really see Franklin strengthening into too much. It has the rain, but Franklin as a tropical entity isn't really present on the Euro model. All right. Look at H-Worth on Franklin. We'll look at it. We'll zoom out to the start. So it's organized right now. It does say it's a 998. If we look at this, it should be, if I look on the actual official homepage, it should be 1002. So this is a little bit stronger than what it is. So it's set to drop 4 millibars in like 3 hours. Let me take this out. It strengthens, and then it gets that core. It's center organized in that core, more developed, faster within 24 hours. And then that allows it to strengthen and become a hurricane as it hits the Dominican Republic, and it's still bringing a lot of rain with it. More on the eastern side, but where the center is and east of it is where the heaviest rain is going to be, according to the H-Worth model. And that brings that over Dominican Republic, takes it down, but doesn't weaken it so where it gets disintegrated, and then that takes it out into the open Atlantic where it becomes a major hurricane. That's just the H-Worth though. Let's see the halves A, and we'll see the halves B. See what's happening. According to the halves A model, the storm stays disorganized, but its center moves towards Haiti and brings more of that heavy rain towards the Dominican Republic on the right side and to the southern part of Haiti, southeast part of Haiti. So that can cause more flooding potentially. And the storm regenerates further west. So it does bring some impacts to Turks and Caicos. And then after that, it starts strengthening and becomes a hurricane. But this one takes it farther west. If we look at the halves B model, let's see if it interacts any differently. It sees Franklin as a lot stronger of a system than it actually is right now. Takes that westward, disintegrates it, has its intensity jumping around, and it doesn't seem to bring as much heavy rain with it, but it still makes a landfall around the southern Dominican Republic, but then bounces its center eastward, and then takes it somewhere and gets discombobulated with not much rain around its center, not a lot of thunderstorms around it, and it continues moving northward. So the halves B model shows it being more disorganized when it's hitting the Dominican Republic. Okay. We'll pan over to the Gulf system now. Let me just use a global model because I have to make this go faster. Use the global model. And we'll look at the Western Atlantic where TD9 is. So this will probably be Harold as long as the storm that's coming off Africa doesn't get named right now or later today. Like if that storm forms faster and gets a name, then this would be Idalia. But most likely, looking at current trends, this will probably be Harold as it's moving westward towards the Texas coastline. So it has a more defined center circulation. So it's gotten this earlier than it showed yesterday. It's gotten a closed circulation earlier. The main issue for it is that it's running out of time. If we scroll out, it only has about 24 hours until it's hitting land. Well, yeah, 24 hours from now until it's hitting land. So if we look at this from an upper dynamic perspective, from a 200 millibar shear perspective, the storm is in a relatively mild shear environment, and it continues to be in a mild shear environment as it's moving along with the flow. So it becomes a 993 storm right before it hits landfall. So that's about a mid-range to strong tropical storm as it's making landfall in southern Texas. So that ramps up pretty quickly over the next 24 hours. If this had more time, it'd probably be a lot stronger. but thankfully it does not have more time. If we look at the 10-meter wind, we can see how strong it will be. So looking at 10-meter wind, the winds seem to be... Oh, this goes by 6 hours. Yeah. The winds... Ugh. My chair is trying to kill me. My bad. Alright, fixie. Okay. So as it's coming onto shore, the wind seemed to be 46 knots down here. So this translates around to 55 miles an hour, I believe. So you get a 55-mile-per-hour storm that's making landfall in southern Texas. That could be pretty impactful, especially with the winds bringing in the surge on the north side. So a couple feet of inundation in addition to the rain that you're getting. So that's going to be noteworthy. If you look at accumulated precipitation, you're not getting super heavy rain, but you're getting a good 3 to 4 inches of rain, which is a decent amount in this area because you need it for drought reasons. So you'll have the wind doing some damage because of tropical storm force. So anything that's like loosely tight or needs to be like tightened to something, should probably tighten that up and make sure it's wrapped so it doesn't fly away. If you're living on the coastline, probably move up just like a little bit away from the water, or put up sandbags to protect your house from flooding. As main things, I wouldn't prepare for like a hurricane type flooding, minimal hurricane type flooding from storm surge. I prepare for at least like 2 to 4 feet of storm surge in this area. So I would definitely bring sandbags with me to fortify any area around the house or anything that's notable that you want to protect from flooding. And then as that continues moving westward, it brings more rain deeper into the United States and northern Mexico, and will eventually make its way into the southwest United States, where Hillary was earlier this week, and earlier today, and yesterday. So it's going to bring more rain over there, but should not be as heavy as it was for Hillary, which was yesterday, and into today, as it's moving up north and dissipating over the Great Basin. So it looks that possible Harold will ramp up pretty quickly before land. If it ramps up faster today, it could be stronger at landfall, so that could be a bigger wind hazard and a storm surge hazard. But it's moving at a good clip, so it shouldn't have enough time to get there. So that should help keep away super strong impacts. But heavy rain and strong surface impact. Make sure you're not going into water because of rip currents, just to stay safe. If you look at the Euro model, it shows a much weaker storm on approach to landfall in southern Texas. Still brings the rain with it, but a much weaker storm, so this wouldn't cause as much surge and wouldn't bring as strong of winds into southern Texas as that continues to move westward. Look at the CMC, Canadian model. Canadian model has more rain, has a more like spotty look to the rain, but it still consolidates the storm a little bit before it makes landfall in southern Texas, and has a strong heavy rain band on its western side that's present and stays there for quite a bit of time. So maybe if we look at accumulated precip, that could bring more rain than expected. Yeah, so like that blob of heavy rain shown by CMC could drop 8 to 10 inches of rain, which can cause flooding in northern Mexico. So I'd be wary of that. The majority of models don't see that type of rain, but it is possible because it is a tropical system after all. We'll check all these models as well, and then we'll get to climate, to like predictions, and then we'll end the video. Looking forward. That's not the system. It's 9. Okay. And the A towards half the system over the Gulf, it ramps it up pretty quickly into a minimal hurricane before it hits land. So that can bring some surge issues, definitely in southern Texas. It's like a Hannah situation where it ramps up pretty quickly within the last 24 hours before landfall, If it had more time, it would have been a lot stronger, but thankfully it does not. So a 986 storm right before making landfall. If we look at radar, that will look like that. So lots of heavy rain to the northwest of it, and with the center, and some rain trailing behind it. And if we take and if we move that out, that heavy rain persists on that western side, like the CMC Canadian model is seeing, and that keeps that rain brought into the desert southwest eventually, as it moves into New Mexico and Arizona over time. We'll look at the halves A as well. We'll bring it back. What's going on? Halves AC is a more disorganized storm, but it has a 999 low pressure system. It has it ramp up a little bit before landfall to 994. So strong, so a mid-range to strong tropical storm right before landfall. Can't rule that out. And then that moves over land and brings heavier rain deeper into the southwest and into the desert eventually. If you look at the halves B, it should see a similar story, but slightly different. Because this one ramps up. It doesn't ramp up as much, but the heavy rain is still there. So there's still a consistent showing of heavy rain in northern Mexico and on the west side of the system. So this will definitely bring heavy rain with it, but it doesn't seem to strengthen very quickly, like the A-Torf is seeing, or not even to the same degree as the halves A model is seeing. Alright, so we'll move out to the global tropics. We'll move out to the global tropics. Not the global, to the North Atlantic tropics as a whole. And we'll run it out for the next 7 days. So Franklin passes by. I have a number storm that tries to form in the Eastern Pacific through a gyre system. See what happens there. Franklin moves north eventually into the open Atlantic. And you get, now this is very unrealistic, but should be something to watch, as that is that wave that's coming off Africa right now. So we move that out into time. It seems that this wave doesn't get too strong as time goes on, and then it gets into a more favorable environment in the long range before it does absolutely crazy stuff later. That's unrealistic because it's too far out to be showing. But if this were to hold true at 92L, I think this would be 92L. Since if this doesn't develop out here and it makes its way westward as it's avoiding the mid-latitude storms, if it gets over here, as GFS is saying, it could do something. Although it's more likely that it curves up into the mid-latitudes, the weaker it stays, the more likely it's going to be able to move west, to where it finds an area where it is suitable for development, and then it can blow up close to land and be a massive problem. That is an issue if that continues to show in more models. As Franklin's ramping up, it does not ramp up due to, I think that should be like shear, due to Franklin's outflow. I'll check. We'll only check out to the 7-day mark for shear for using upper dynamics. Yeah, it has a good environment. It might be dry air that's stopping it. It gets in the Tut. Franklin moves north into the shear thing. And then this storm gets underneath upper level anticyclone and is able to strengthen later. So it stays weak until it gets a break in the opening towards the end of the month, which is when the Atlantic is supposed to be more favorable for development as the wind shear goes away and it begins to lighten up. Alright, some things I'm seeing in the long range. We were using a NOAA Core Reef Watch. The Atlantic is still very warm. Large swaths of the Atlantic are still very warm. at least 1 degree Celsius or warmer. Most of it going up to 2, but some is going up to 3. Not many beyond that. The El Nino is still growing, but not very quickly. It's still concentrated in Eastern Pacific, and the entire Pacific west of that, all the way to the Indian Ocean, is warm. The subtropics and the northern latitudes of the Pacific are also warm. Off Japan, very so, like 5 degrees Celsius warmer than what it should be, which is about 10 degrees Fahrenheit. It's 9 degrees Fahrenheit, but we'll round it up to 10, so it's easier for you to understand. It's still a cool pocket just south of Hawaii of cooler water, and the rest of the ocean is just warm in general. If we look at actual temperatures using this, we can see the majority of the Gulf of Mexico is at 30 degrees Celsius or warmer. This area especially is like 31, 32. The Gulf Stream over here, it's warm. It's about 29, 30 degrees Celsius, 31 in some of these areas. And the rest of the Atlantic, basically almost all of it, is warm enough to support a tropical cyclone if conditions were right. Pacific, still warm on that side as well. Still a good amount of warm water here, but not as. But the picture doesn't look as astounding as the Atlantic does, but still warm enough for a tropical system. And then you have warm water south of Hawaii, which can support a tropical system, but not as well as it could in the Eastern Pacific. Again, anomalies, the Gulf is still running, and especially in like the Northern Gulf, 2 degrees Celsius above normal. A lot of the Atlantic's running 1 to 1.5 degrees above normal. In some places in the MDR and in the North Atlantic near Spain, is running 2 to 3 degrees above normal. El Nino is still kicking on, but its effects so far this year haven't done too much. Still a bunch of rising air in the Atlantic and over here. Just depends which one wins the battle, really. So we have to continue watching this. The Atlantic's still warm enough to do stuff, even though the current pattern is not favorable. There's still 5 tropical cyclones out there. Well, 4 tropical cyclones out there. 1 that's coming about. Now, we look at the Climate Prediction Center. We'll look at it. We'll look at the temperatures over the United States. Should be warmer in 6 to 10 day outlook across most of the country. Across most of the country, the southeast, the west, the mountain west, should be drier in the Midwest and wetter on the East Coast. Where I live in New Jersey, in like the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast, it should be cooler than normal for the next 4 days, for the next 6 to 10 days, which will be at the end of the month. 8 to 14 day continues. That warmth stays in the south, continues. So that's not really going to allow the Gulf to cool down that much really. Still looks warm in the south, even 3 to 4 weeks out. If we look at the drought monitor, there's a good amount of the upper Midwest, the West Midwest, that's in a drought condition right now. In drought conditions, most of it's in moderate to severe drought, and some pockets of extreme drought, and just a few tiny areas of exceptional drought. In Texas, almost the entire state is in drought. Most of it is moderate to severe, but in the southeast part of the state, there's more extreme drought, especially around like Houston and that area, and Cameron and southwest Louisiana. California, there is no drought on a drought monitor. That rain from Hillary is definitely going to erode the drought that is there. And in the Pacific Northwest, there is a drought, moderate to severe. And I don't see this rectifying itself too much soon. So fires that do get started up here will have plenty of fuel to burn through. If we look at tropics, looks like the Atlantic stays active even into September. It doesn't stay as wet though. The West Pacific's also going to get seeing activity. Eastern Pacific stays active. But for now, the Atlantic will be most active, at least from a number perspective right now. But it should get more favorable as time goes on. You can look at the climate model. You can look at the CFS monthly, and look at upper dynamics. This ridge here is going to prevent storms from easily getting out to sea. So this ridge is going to stop storms from just recurving out. Like if one were to get far enough west, it's not going to be able to curve out to sea as easily because there's going to be more ridging here. So it will be forced to go west in the basin. But we are looking for shear here, which would be this. Shear anomaly for September. It looks lighter in the Western Caribbean, a little bit more in the East Caribbean, lighter in the main development region. So it's not as bad. October the shear increases over the southern United States a lot. Stays low in the Eastern Caribbean. And during November, it looks like the entire tropical Atlantic begins to clear out again for lower wind shear. Wind shear would be increasing by now, but a decreased amount of wind shear compared to average will just keep it more favorable for tropical cyclones in November before it should start shutting down later in the month. Right now, if we look at our El Nino, look at it through here, not these tabs, you can see that the El Nino is still there, yes, at the surface, but there's a lack of warm water underneath here that can reinforce the El Nino by getting a westerly wind burst up here that can actually force this water to come up. That's not happening, as there's a pool of cool water that's building down here. So this pool of cool water is not going to allow this El Nino to strengthen rapidly. It's going to continue to slowly develop over time, and it will probably won't last as long because there's not as much of a base to keep it surviving. So even though there's probably going to be an El Nino this fall and winter, which will impact the weather globally, this El Nino should not last too long because there's not as much warm water underneath to actually support its continued development. And at the surface, it's 30 degrees Celsius west of the date line, and it's still warm in the east to a degree, 24, 26 degrees Celsius. Warmer than what it should be, but there's definitely cooler water just beneath that. So if you get a easterly wind burst over here like that, which will probably not happen soon, but if we do, this will start eroding the El Nino pretty fast, and we'll start transitioning back to neutral conditions when we start getting easterly winds to begin returning in this area. But it doesn't seem like we're going to get that happening, but it does seem like we're going to get a westerly wind burst that's going to really get the El Nino going. Alright guys, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. We talked about a lot of stuff here. If you guys want to keep seeing more of these videos, just let me know. I'm just trying to make like more videos in general. I want to make more stuff that's like important to people, like weather, COVID, disease, any stuff that's important to people. Trying to research more stuff to make videos like better, and really try to get people to understand stuff. Don't want to downplay stuff, don't want to overhype it, but we always want to try and explain and give questions to people. Alright, so I didn't do this on stream because I felt like I could just make a video about it, which would be easier. And I hope you guys enjoyed that. So I'll see you guys tomorrow. Another video. Probably talk about that hurricane thing in the video where I talk about tropical cyclones. It doesn't have any sources. It's based off everything I know in my head. And I'll get that that jailbreak video should probably come out the same day. So I'll begin recording that after I stream later today, which will be in like 15 minutes hopefully. But I just need that video to get uploaded faster. Alright, so I'll see you guys later, and I hope you guys have a good day. Bye, I'll see you guys later.